Hello, Year 6, and I'm here again today to read you a little bit more from our book. So, we had just got to the part where Lily was answering the register, but her teacher didn't ask her to speak up anymore. She just let her speak in her little quiet voice. She'd look over at me with large eyes, but she didn't urge me to speak up or chide me for being too quiet as she did with the other kids. When Mum asked me about my day, as she always did, I told her that it had gone fine, and she would pinch my cheek gently, affectionately, like she used to when I was little. She would never ask me anything more, as Dad would have, and so I said nothing more. I never lost the feeling of loneliness that had begun on that first day sitting outside Mrs. Charlton's office on that scratchy blue chair, nor the feeling of being watched. I felt like people were always looking at me. They could see how alone I was. It was as though I had drawn a line around me that no one wanted to cross. No one but Betsy. "You got to speak," she would say to me. "Speak up, no mumbling." We got into the habit of spending the afternoons together. Betsy went to another school that was a bus ride away. When her family first came to this country, they had to live in another part of the city, and she'd started at a different school, and her dad didn't want to move her. "My voice just clenches up, and I can't say anything," I tried to explain. "How can a voice clench up?" Betsy said, her head cocked to one side, which I knew by now meant she was thinking about something. "It's too late now," I told her. "Everyone thinks I can't speak. Even my teacher. She won't ask me a question anymore because she's worried I won't say anything and there'll be silence. Which there probably will be because I don't know the answer anyway." I knew from the first that I could confide in Betsy. She knew all about Dad not coming with us, how Tybert had changed since we'd arrived, everything that had happened in school. She in turn told me what it was like to have so many brothers who were always shouting and fighting, how she missed Columbia and her cousins who still lived there. She'd adjusted to the cold by keeping moving and by wearing 2 t-shirts under her jumper. Betsy told me a little more about her family. She didn't seem to like talking about them that much. Her dad worked nights like Mum, but at the hospital. Sometimes he got so angry that he was controlled by his anger. She made it sound like his anger was quite separate to him, a person who sometimes came to visit and was unwelcome, but who insisted on staying over for a while anyway. "My mum left for a long time now," Betsy said with a shrug. "She didn't like my father being angry also." "I'm sorry," I said immediately. She shrugged again. "It's the way it is." She was scared. But Betsy wasn't scared of her dad. She wasn't scared of anyone. She was a good listener, though she was also good at calling a halt to conversations when there was nothing more to say. "Let's play now," Betsy said, as she so often did when she deemed that we had, in her own words, done enough talking. "Today we shoot on goal." She nodded to herself at the suggestion. Betsy thought the answer to most things was football, and when I first told her about my troubles at school, she immediately said, "I'd definitely teach you football. It'd make everything much, much better." I had my doubts about that, but in fact she was right. I always felt better when we had played together, even though I wasn't particularly good at football. But I could only see Betsy for those few hours after school. The rest of the time I was very, very lonely. I always stowed one of the things I'd found in the bin, by the bin in my pocket. Mostly it was the walnut, but sometimes it was the wooden ridgy thing, or the matchbox. The last surprise, the package that had been carefully wrapped in newspaper, was some sort of dark green dried out leaf. Couldn't carry that in my pocket, or it would have fallen apart. I always left it in my hiding place under the floorboard. I had figured out a little more about how these things worked. I could only use them once. After that, they were used up. So I stowed my leaf away very, very carefully. I would use it only when I really, really needed it. Although the other things wouldn't work anymore, having them in my pocket made me feel a little less lonely somehow. Someone was leaving those things for me. Someone who knew that I needed them, knew that I would like them. So I suppose I did have friends after all. I had Betsy, and someone else too, someone I'd never met. Just as I got used not to talking, I got used to being alone in school. It wasn't so difficult in class because we had to be quiet in lessons, but unlike everyone else, I didn't look forward to playtimes. I felt much more alone when I was surrounded by all the other children playing, shouting to one another, running past me as though I was invisible. I started to dread going to school. My feet dragged along more and more slowly each morning, One day, Tiber was annoyed with me for making him late and started to pull me along by the hand. It hurt, but he said it was my fault. He told me I would get used to going to school here. He had, hadn't he? But I wasn't so sure that I would.